And now, we take an analytical, level-headed look at the Hamlet adaptation that came out in December 2000, directed by Campbell Scott.
Cassius, you wanna get this review thing started? Cassius?
Was tiring.
Are you good to go now?
Yeah, I'm fine. Let's discuss this like rational human beings, shall we? The whole aesthetic is very post-war South, and that setting and sound seem to be pretty divisive. I know a lot of people who hate them, and I kind of get where they're coming from. That said, the claustrophobic grandeur of this palace, and the alternation of tension and slippery grace in the soundtrack make me very happy. I really particularly love the castle. Every time we move through those hallways, I think it's fantastic.
I am but mad north-northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw.
Although I do agree on the castle being an amazing setting, the music doesn't really work for me. It's mostly okay during the first half, but after that it seems like whoever composed the music wasn't given a chance to view this film when he recorded the tracks. Dramatic scenes end up being accompanied by strange piano twitches, and the final scene makes it seem like the musician was just hitting random keys. Yes, those cues are meant to be jarring, but when a scene is clearly presented to be otherwise, it causes quite a bit of dissonance. As far as the presentation of the story goes, I found that the addition of non-verbalized interactions between the characters added a good bit to the characterization, and was a good way to get around the rather strict dialogue of the play that it's based on.
Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.
Good, my lord. How does your honor for this many a day?
I humbly thank you well. Well...
Now I do realize that this was a relatively low-budget made-for-TV movie, but some of the shot decisions confuse me. The night scenes have rather harsh fluorescent lights, to the point where the artificiality is really noticeable. Speaking of not being subtle, the scene where Polonius presents Ophelia for his plan to reveal Hamlet.
And Polonius' family is black, much like Browne's Hamlet family was all blonde and blue-eyed, but you've noticed that by now, you smart viewers, you.
Right. As I was saying, when Polonius presents Ophelia to Claudius and Gertrude as part of his plan to reveal the cause of Hamlet's madness.
Oh, speaking of Hamlet, the to-be or not-to-be moment is a bit on the nose. Oh, what an ass am I, though? Totally makes up for it by being legitimately hilarious.
You really like this movie, don't you?
Maybe.
Right. As I was saying, Campbell Scott treats us to one of the most blatant lamb to the slaughter shots in the history of cinema. At this point, it's established that this interpretation of Polonius is much more sinister than most, but this is just overkill. The director already managed to do a fantastic job at making Polonius a rather dark character, so having a shot like this is simply too much. Another little problem that I have is the presentation of Fortinbras. As we've said, he's a tricky character to present. Here, the first time we see him is on his horse on a beach. If you've been exposed to more complete versions of Hamlet before, you already know who this guy is and why he's important to the story. If you haven't, then him returning at the end of the play out of nowhere will confuse the hell out of you. He's simply not given a decent build-up to warrant an appearance at the end of this production. It's not just the Prince of Norway that's the problem, but his army as well. During the My Thoughts Be Bloody speech, Hamlet talks of being inspired by Fortinbras' army to return home to Elsinore. Well, it's a bit difficult to believe that when said army looks nothing more like a bunch of drunken hobos hanging out at the beach.
Now we move on to the main cast. The player king and the ghost are doubled, which is awesome, because Claudius totally has a reason to flip his lid during a play within a play because it looks exactly like his brother. Also, after the performance, Hamlet is all decked out in stage makeup because he was hanging out with the actors, so he totally wears eyeliner and a crown for a while. It is powerfully batshit. Not to mention, it leads to the greatest closet scene ever, with Hamlet and Gertrude finally relating to each other as mother and son who've been through hell together but are now relegated to experiencing their trauma alone because the trust is so thoroughly gone.
Okay, first of all, this scene is either terrifying or hilarious. Either way, it's pretty awesome. Second of all, Scott. Dude. The audience is fully aware that Blair Browne has impressive cleavage. You do not have to frame every single shot of her based on this one fact. She can act. Let us see that by actually framing her face so we can see all the subtleties in her performance, especially in a highly emotional scene like this.
Ophelia is really solid. She's a bit tougher than most Ophelias and definitely doesn't ever fall apart pre-madness the way most of them do. She's a real human being and not just a punching bag for the men. You go, girl. Claudius and Gertrude are seriously awesome, and look how they're introduced in this wordless sequence. Oh, hell yeah. That is some classy shit right there. It's followed up with Polonius burning a document. This is the most aesthetically pleasing and graceful lechery and political subterfuge I've ever seen. The older generation is overall incredible. They're serious and legit without being ridiculous. Claudius is smart, savvy, evil, and Polonius is not played up as stupid, which is a nice change of pace.
Not only that, Polonius is played as downright sinister in this interpretation. He's cunning, calculating, and manipulative. The late Roscoe Browne plays the role with such conviction that makes this presentation of Polonius as a borderline nefarious puppet master all the more chilling.
Alright, I have to stop being a boring fangirl bitch and talk about the one thing I hate about this movie. Laertes. I've seen this movie an unholy number of times, and every time I think to myself, surely I have misjudged him. This is the time when I see the film and realize what the f he's trying to get at. And every time, I am proven woefully wrong. The man has zero inflection at all. It's like he's trying to whisper the play to a dying man while hiding from the Nazis, like all of this sense of urgency and none of the actual execution.
Will you chase treasure open to his unmastered importunity? Fear it, Ophelia. And keep you in the rear of your affection.
It's really the opposite of good. It does not help that he's playing off the deliciously awesome Jamey Sheridan in the Laertes Claudius scenes either.
But dip a knife in it, where it draws blood. No cataplasm so rare can save the thing from death that is but scratched withal.
One of the most noticeable problems with this Laertes is the lack of coordination between his face and his body. His face is clearly trying to act, but the rest of his body seems to be frozen in place for most of his scenes. Dude, you have a torso with arms and legs attached to it. Use them to help convey your emotions.
I'll not be juggled with. To hell allegiance, vows to the blackest devil. Let come what comes, only I'll be revenged most thoroughly for my father.
We finally get to our lead actor. Campbell Scott, as Hamlet, is intense. He's not manic or depressive, just intense, and that intensity manages to convey all the necessary parts of the character just by spilling over in various ways. We get madness, real madness of a sort, though nothing that would definitively explain Hamlet as just crazy. We get despair, we get incredible wit, we get love, and yet it's coherent. It's one of the few Hamlets that doesn't slice away entire facets of his personality. Olivier's, for example, cuts away all of the mania, Hawke cuts away all the regality, and Campbell Scott manages to keep the role consistent while touching on all of it. Finally! Hamlet's madness is really great. He's clearly troubled and working hard at keeping himself together. He indulges whenever he can lean on someone or run rings around them because it's a way to connect.
The only real problem that I have with this Hamlet is the way that he's shot. And since he's directing, the blame goes to him. When you're portraying emotional subtleties, it would really help if you let the audience see your face. The camera is moved too far back on most of his shots. Of course, he does do close-ups every once in a while, but when he does, we get a brand new problem. Every time we get close, we can clearly observe his eyes desperately trying not to look at the camera. One could see this as wheels turning in his head, but the fact that his eyeballs pull some of the sharpest turns this side of the Circuitous Pas Francorchamps to avoid looking at the lens kind of negates that theory.
For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause.
Overall, just frickin' see this movie. It is good. Seriously, just do it.
This is one of the most accessible Hamlets that I've ever seen, and is great for people who have never seen the play. Except maybe for the whole Fortinbras part. That might confuse them a bit.
And for the record, I think that Fortinbras isn't great in this, but not awful either. I don't think that the cutting of the script is what makes him bad. It's just that a composed post-war South setting doesn't quite jive with the hard-ass military vibe the character usually requires. And with that, we end our look at Hallmark Entertainment's Hamlet. Next time, it's the adaptation that involves a Time Lord from Gallifrey, a captain from the United Federation of Planets, and a governor from Naboo. Until then, this has been Cassius.
And this has been Sharky.
Your loves as mine to you. Farewell.